Have you ever lost something precious, only to find it years later with someone else? When Ranger vanished, Emily never gave up hope. 6 years later, a worn dog tag reveals the impossible. Her beloved German Shepherd has been living just miles away, saving another family when they needed him most. What happens when two families discover they've shared the same loyal heart? Subscribe now and comment where you're watching from. The autumn wind carried a chill through the Oakwood Animal Shelter's concrete halls as Dr. Noah Carter made his evening rounds. The tall, lean veterinarian with salt and pepper hair and kind hazel eyes adjusted his wire-rimmed glasses, listening to the symphony of barks and whimpers that had become the soundtrack to his 15 years of service. But one sound always stood apart, a haunting, mournful howl that echoed from the last kennel on the right. "Hey there, big guy," Noah whispered, kneeling before the enclosure. Inside sat Ranger, a magnificent German Shepherd with a coat of rich black and tan. Unlike the other dogs who bounded excitedly at the sight of a human, Ranger remained stoic in the corner, his amber eyes reflecting an intelligence and sorrow that seemed almost human. "Still not eating much, huh?" Noah noted, checking the barely touched bowl of premium dog food. He gently slid his hand through the bars. Ranger didn't growl or retreat. He never did, but neither did he approach. The dog simply watched, his gaze steady and penetrating. "Noah, you still here?" The voice belonged to Melissa, the shelter's night manager. Her footsteps echoed down the corridor as she approached, clipboard in hand. "Just checking on our mystery man," Noah replied, not taking his eyes off Ranger. "That dog breaks my heart," Melissa said, leaning against the wall. 3 weeks, and I've never seen him wag his tail. Not once. Noah nodded, remembering the day Ranger arrived. The woman who brought him in, Evelyn Vasquez, had been dressed in black, her eyes rimmed red. "His name is Shadow," she'd said, her voice barely above a whisper. "He was my husband Jack's dog. I can't keep him anymore." "Did you notice this?" Noah asked Melissa now, pointing to the worn metal tag on Ranger's collar. The dim shelter lighting made it difficult to read, but Noah had been fixated on it for days. There was something scratched beneath the name Shadow, something faint but deliberate. "Here, hold this," Noah said, passing his flashlight to Melissa. He carefully extended his arm through the bars, fingers brushing against Ranger's collar. The dog remained still, allowing the touch but showing no reaction. "Emily Harper," Noah read aloud, tracing the faded engraving. "And a phone number." But Evelyn said his name was Shadow. Melissa frowned. "Exactly." Noah stood, brushing off his knees. "And she said Jack had him for 8 years. But this dog isn't older than 7 or 8 total." "What are you thinking, Doc?" Noah's expression turned thoughtful. "I'm thinking there's more to this story than Evelyn told us." That night, as Noah drove home through the rain-slicked streets of Northern Virginia, the image of Ranger's unwagging tail haunted him. In his 20 years as a veterinarian, he'd learned to read the silent language of animals, their joy, their fear, their pain. And what he read in Ranger wasn't anger or aggression. It was heartbreak, pure and profound. "Emily Harper," he whispered to himself as he pulled into his driveway. "Who are you? And what happened to your dog?" The following morning dawned crisp and clear, sunlight streaming through the blinds of Noah's modest office at the shelter. His desk was cluttered with patient files, coffee mugs, and framed photos of his own rescue dog, a 3-legged golden retriever named Cooper. The steady hum of his ancient desktop computer filled the room as he typed Emily Harper into the National Lost Pet database. Come on, he muttered, drumming his fingers against the desk as he waited for the search results. The aging system crawled at a glacial pace, testing his already thin patience. A knock at the door interrupted his focus. Melissa poked her head in, her curly hair pulled back in a messy bun. "Ranger's not eating again," she reported, concern etching lines around her eyes. "I tried everything. Chicken, beef, even those expensive treats you ordered." Noah sighed. "Have you tried hand-feeding him?" "For 20 minutes, she replied. "He just stares at me, like he's waiting for someone else." The computer chimed, drawing Noah's attention back to the screen. His eyes widened as he scanned the search results. "Melissa, look at this," he said, waving her over. "A missing pet report filed 6 years ago by an Emily Harper in Fairfax County. German Shepherd, male, 3 years old at the time of disappearance." Melissa leaned over his shoulder, squinting at the screen. Is there a picture? Noah clicked on the attachment, and a photo loaded. A younger version of Ranger, his coat glossier, his stance more playful, but with the same distinctive white patch on his chest shaped like a crescent moon. That's him, Melissa whispered. That's definitely him. According to this, Noah continued, scrolling through the report, Ranger disappeared the night Emily moved into a new house in Meadowbrook Heights. She searched for months, put up flyers, contacted every shelter within 50 miles. And somehow he ended up with this Jack person? Melissa's forehead creased in confusion. Apparently, Noah jotted down the contact information from the report. I'm going to call her. Noah, wait. Melissa placed a hand on his arm. It's been 6 years. She might have moved on, gotten another dog. And what about Evelyn? She just lost her husband. Should we really be dredging all this up? Noah's gaze drifted to a framed quote on his wall, his professional mantra. Healing begins with truth. I have to try, he said firmly. If Cooper went missing and someone found him years later, I'd want to know. Wouldn't you? Melissa nodded reluctantly. Just be careful. There are a lot of hearts involved here. After Melissa left, Noah dialed the number from the report, his pulse quickening with each ring. He was about to hang up when a soft female voice answered. Hello. Noah cleared his throat. Is this Emily Harper? Yes. Who's calling? My name is Dr. Noah Carter. I'm a veterinarian at Oakwood Animal Shelter in Alexandria. He paused, suddenly unsure how to continue. Ms. Harper, this might sound strange, but did you lose a German Shepherd named Ranger about 6 years ago? The silence that followed was so complete that Noah thought the call had dropped. Then he heard it, a sharp intake of breath, followed by a trembling voice. How did you? Emily's voice broke. Is he? Did you find him? I think so, Noah replied gently. Would it be possible for you to come to the shelter? To make a positive identification? I'll be there in an hour, Emily said, her words rushed and breathless. As Noah hung up, he felt the weight of what he'd just set in motion. 6 years of separation, 2 families, 1 dog. The truth was about to collide with memory, and he wasn't sure if the impact would heal or hurt. He headed back to Ranger's kennel, kneeling once more before the solemn dog. Your past is coming to meet you, he whispered. I hope I'm doing the right thing. The clock on the shelter wall ticked loudly, marking each passing minute as Noah waited in the reception area. His knee bounced nervously, and he found himself constantly glancing toward the entrance doors. It was nearly noon, almost an hour since his call with Emily Harper. You're going to wear a hole in that floor, remarked Darlene, the elderly receptionist who had manned the front desk for over a decade. Her silver hair was pulled into a tight bun, and her reading glasses hung from a beaded chain around her neck. Sorry, Noah mumbled, forcing his leg to be still. It's just, this is big, Darlene. Really big. She hummed, not looking up from her crossword puzzle. 6-letter word for reunion. Any ideas? Before Noah could answer, the shelter doors swung open, letting in a gust of autumn air and a woman who appeared to be in her early 30s. She was of medium height with chestnut hair that fell in loose waves past her shoulders. Her green eyes darted anxiously around the room until they landed on Noah. Dr. Carter? She asked, her voice slightly breathless. She wore a simple blue sweater and jeans, and Noah noticed her hands were trembling slightly. Emily Harper? He stood and extended his hand. Thank you for coming so quickly. Where is he? She didn't take his hand, her gaze intense and focused. Is he okay? Can I see him? Noah nodded, understanding her urgency. Of course. Follow me. But I should prepare you. He's been through a lot. He doesn't respond much to people now. They walked through the shelter corridor, passing kennels of barking dogs. Noah watched Emily from the corner of his eye. She was fighting for composure, her knuckles white as she gripped the strap of her purse. How did you find him? She asked as they walked. He was brought in 3 weeks ago by a woman named Evelyn Vasquez, Noah explained carefully. Her husband passed away, and she said she couldn't keep him anymore. She called him Shadow. Emily halted abruptly. Shadow? But his name is Ranger. I know. That's what made me curious. Noah stopped outside the last kennel. His tag is worn, but I could make out your name underneath the newer engraving. Emily stepped forward, her breath catching as she saw the German Shepherd lying on a thin blanket at the back of the kennel. Ranger lifted his head, ears perking slightly at the new visitor. Ranger? Emily's voice was barely a whisper, trembling with emotion. She knelt down, her fingers curling around the metal bars. "Ranger, it's me. It's Emily." The dog rose slowly, his amber eyes fixed on Emily. He took a hesitant step forward, then another, his nose twitching as he caught her scent. "He hasn't approached anyone since he arrived," Noah murmured, watching in amazement. Emily reached a shaking hand through the bars. "Do you remember me, boy? Do you remember your mom?" Ranger moved closer, sniffing her outstretched fingers. There was a moment of stillness, a heartbeat of uncertainty. Then he pressed his nose against her palm and let out a soft whine. "Oh my God," Emily gasped, tears spilling down her cheeks. "Oh my God, it's really you." Noah quickly unlocked the kennel door, and Emily slipped inside. She knelt on the concrete floor, and Ranger approached her cautiously. He sniffed her face, her hair, her shoulders, taking in the scent of a past life. "I never stopped looking for you," Emily whispered, her voice breaking. "I never gave up hope." Something shifted in Ranger's demeanor, a recognition dawning in his eyes. He let out a sound that was half whine, half howl, and then collapsed against Emily, his entire body trembling as he nuzzled into her arms, licking her hands and face frantically. Noah stood transfixed, watching as the dog who had never wagged his tail suddenly couldn't keep it still, its rapid movement a blur of black and tan. The entire shelter seemed to fall silent, the other dogs quieting as if sensing the profound reunion unfolding. Staff members paused in their tasks, drawn by the unmistakable sound of joyful whimpering. "I think," Darlene said softly, appearing beside Noah. "The word I was looking for is return." The small conference room at the back of the shelter offered privacy for the emotional reunion. Emily sat cross-legged on the floor, Ranger pressed against her side, his head resting in her lap as she gently stroked his fur. The dog hadn't left her side for a moment, as if afraid she might disappear again. Noah entered with 2 steaming mugs of coffee, setting one on the table near Emily. "I thought you might need this," he said, taking a seat in a folding chair across from her. "Thank you." She accepted the mug with one hand, the other still buried in Ranger's fur. "I still can't believe this is happening. 6 years. I thought I'd never see him again." Noah nodded, watching the pair with a mix of professional satisfaction and personal warmth. "Would you mind telling me what happened? How did you lose him?" Emily took a deep breath, her fingers absently tracing the outline of Ranger's ear. "It was October 2018. I'd just gone through a difficult divorce and needed a fresh start, so I bought a house in Meadowbrook Heights. It was our first night there. Boxes everywhere, total chaos." She paused, her eyes growing distant with the memory. "I was bringing in the last load from the car when the delivery guys arrived with my furniture. In all the commotion, I didn't notice Ranger had slipped out the front door." "You searched for him?" Noah prompted gently. "Everywhere." Emily's voice cracked. "For months. I put up flyers, called every shelter, walked the neighborhood calling his name every night until the neighbors thought I was crazy. He had a microchip, but no one ever scanned it, apparently. The chip might have migrated," Noah explained. "It happens sometimes, makes them harder to detect. And if Jack, the man who had him, never took him to a vet who checked." Emily nodded, wiping away a tear. "I couldn't sell the house. I kept thinking he might find his way back. I've been living there alone all this time, hoping." She looked down at Ranger, who gazed back at her with unwavering devotion. "He was my rock after my divorce. When I lost him, it was like losing my last piece of stability." Noah leaned forward, his expression serious. "Emily, there's something else you should know. According to Evelyn, Ranger, or Shadow, as they called him, meant a great deal to her husband Jack. He apparently found Ranger injured by the roadside and nursed him back to health. Jack suffered from severe depression, and she said the dog was his emotional lifeline." Emily's eyes closed briefly, her face a canvas of conflicting emotions. "So he saved someone else too," she whispered, looking down at her dog. "That sounds like my boy. I need to be transparent with you," Noah continued. "Legally, Ranger is your dog. Your missing pet report and his microchip established that. But there's an ethical dimension here that's complicated. You're wondering if I should let Evelyn keep him," Emily said, her voice surprisingly steady. "I'm just saying there are 2 people who love this dog very much." The room fell silent except for Ranger's soft breathing. Emily stared at the wall, her thoughts clearly racing behind her green eyes. "I'd like to meet her," she finally said. "This Evelyn person. I think we both need to understand the full story." Noah nodded. "I'll arrange it. Can I take him home tonight, though?" Emily asked, a note of pleading in her voice. "Just to see if he remembers the house." Noah hesitated only briefly. "I'll need you to fill out some paperwork, but yes, I think that would be good for him." He paused, watching how Ranger's body had completely relaxed against Emily for the first time since his arrival at the shelter. "And honestly, I think it would be good for you too." As Emily filled out the temporary release forms, Noah stepped outside to call Evelyn Vasquez. His hand hovered over the phone, the weight of responsibility heavy on his shoulders. 2 lives, 2 loves, 1 faithful heart caught in between. He wondered if he was opening a door that would heal or hurt. Sometimes, he murmured to himself, remembering his father's words from long ago. The right path isn't the easiest one. With that thought, he dialed Evelyn's number, watching through the window as Emily pressed her forehead against Ranger's, whispering promises 6 years overdue. The evening air held a crisp chill as Noah pulled into the driveway of Emily's colonial-style home in Meadowbrook Heights. The neighborhood exuded upper-middle-class comfort, mature trees, manicured lawns, and tasteful holiday decorations already adorning some porches despite it being early November. "This is it," Emily said from the passenger seat, her voice a blend of nerves and excitement. She glanced back at Ranger, who sat alertly in the rear seat, his ears perked forward as if sensing the significance of their destination. Noah had offered to drive them home, partly out of professional concern for Ranger's adjustment, but mostly because he couldn't deny his investment in this unfolding story. As a veterinarian, he'd witnessed countless human-animal bonds, but something about this reunion tugged at him in ways that transcended professional interest. "Do you think he'll remember it?" Emily asked, her fingers nervously playing with her keys. "Animals remember scents more than visuals," Noah explained gently. "And this place probably smells like you," which to him means home. They exited the car, and Emily hesitated before opening the rear door. When she did, Ranger stepped out cautiously, his nose immediately working overtime, sampling the evening air with rapid sniffs. "Let him explore at his own pace," Noah advised as Emily reached for Ranger's leash. "Let's see what he remembers." Emily nodded, and instead of leading Ranger, she simply opened the front gate and watched. The German Shepherd stood still for a moment, surveying the front yard with intense focus. He took a few tentative steps forward, then paused at a large oak tree near the walkway, sniffing intently around its base. "That was his favorite spot," Emily whispered, her eyes glistening. "He used to lie under that tree for hours, watching the neighborhood." Ranger moved on, following some invisible trail up the front walk to the porch. When he reached the front door, he looked back at Emily expectantly, his tail giving a slight wag. "Oh my God," Emily breathed, her hand flying to her mouth. "He remembers. Noah, he remembers the house." Inside, Ranger moved from room to room with increasing confidence, his nose guiding him through the layout. In the living room, he paused at a well-worn blue armchair, circling it twice before settling beside it with a deep sigh. "That was his spot," Emily explained, her voice thick with emotion. "Right next to my reading chair. Every night for 3 years." Noah watched as Emily knelt beside Ranger, her fingers gently combing through his fur. "You remembered, didn't you, boy? You knew exactly where home was." The dog's response was immediate. He rolled onto his back, exposing his belly in a display of complete trust, something Noah had never witnessed during Ranger's weeks at the shelter. "I've kept all his things," Emily said, rising to her feet. She disappeared into a hallway closet and returned with a worn red ball. This was his favorite toy. At the sight of the ball, Ranger leapt to his feet, his body quivering with excitement. Emily rolled it across the hardwood floor, and the dog bounded after it, returning it to her feet with a playfulness that transformed him from the solemn creature of the shelter into an entirely different animal. "I can't believe this is the same dog," Noah marveled, watching Ranger prance around the living room with the ball. "It's like he shed years of sadness in minutes." Emily's laugh was pure joy mixed with tears. "This is who he really is. This is my Ranger." She turned to Noah, her expression suddenly serious. "I'm never letting him go again. I can't, but I still want to meet Evelyn." I need to understand what happened during those years. Noah nodded, thinking of the brief, tense phone call he'd had with Evelyn earlier. She had agreed to meet them tomorrow, her voice tight with emotion. She'll be at the coffee shop near the shelter at 11 a.m. I'll be there too, if that's okay. Thank you, Emily said, reaching out to squeeze his hand. For everything. For noticing his tag, for finding me, for bringing him home. As Noah prepared to leave, he paused at the door, watching as Ranger circled 3 times before settling into the exact center of a faded dog bed Emily had placed in the corner. Another relic from his previous life, preserved as if in a museum of hope. Some things, Noah said softly, the heart never forgets. The morning brought a blustery wind that sent fallen leaves skittering across the sidewalk outside Percolate, a cozy coffee shop 3 blocks from the animal shelter. Noah arrived first, securing a quiet corner table away from the bustling counter. His fingers tapped nervously against his ceramic mug as he watched the door, mentally rehearsing what he might say to facilitate this delicate meeting. Emily arrived next, Ranger walking obediently at her side. She had dressed carefully, a dark green sweater that brought out her eyes and dark jeans, as if for a job interview. Her face reflected a night of little sleep, but her eyes held determination. Several patrons turned to admire the handsome German shepherd, who remained alert but calm beside his owner. Is this okay? Emily asked Noah, gesturing to Ranger. I didn't want to leave him alone after just getting him back, and the shop owner said service dogs are welcome. It's fine, Noah assured her, watching as Ranger settled under the table at Emily's feet. How was your first night together? Emily's expression softened. Like a dream. He slept on my bed, jumped right up like he'd done it yesterday, not 6 years ago. He remembered where everything was, Noah. The backyard, his water bowl spot, everything. Noah smiled, but before he could respond, the door chimed again. A woman in her early 60s entered, her silver-streaked dark hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. She wore a navy peacoat and carried herself with the stiff posture of someone bracing for impact. Her eyes, dark and tired, scanned the room until they found Noah. That's Evelyn, he murmured to Emily, standing to wave the woman over. As Evelyn approached, Ranger's head lifted, his ears perking forward. A low whine escaped his throat, not fearful, but recognizing. Shadow, Evelyn breathed, her composed facade cracking slightly at the sight of the dog. Then her eyes traveled to Emily, and a complex emotion crossed her face. Noah made the introductions quickly, and the women exchanged tense nods as Evelyn took a seat across from Emily. An uncomfortable silence fell over the table. Thank you for coming, Emily finally said, her hands wrapped tightly around her coffee cup. I wanted to meet you, to understand. Evelyn's gaze remained fixed on Ranger, who was now watching her intently from beneath the table. I didn't steal him, she said abruptly, her voice defensive. My husband found him wounded by the roadside in Sterling. November 2018. His back leg was injured, and he had no collar. He must have lost it running, Emily said softly. But he had a microchip. Jack never took him to a vet, Evelyn explained, sighing deeply. We couldn't afford it. He cleaned the wound himself, nursed Shadow, Ranger, back to health in our garage. She paused, swallowing hard. Jack was a construction worker before the accident. After his back injury, the depression hit hard. He couldn't work, couldn't find purpose. Finding the dog, it gave him something to live for. Noah watched Emily's face, seeing the conflict play across her features as she absorbed this information. What was he like? Emily asked suddenly. Jack, what was he like with Ranger? The question seemed to catch Evelyn off guard. She blinked rapidly, then reached for her purse and withdrew a worn photograph, sliding it across the table. The image showed a broad-shouldered man with a salt and pepper beard, sitting on a porch step with Ranger pressed against his side, both looking out at whatever lay beyond the camera's frame. They were inseparable, Evelyn said, her voice softening. Jack would talk to him for hours, about his pain, his fears, things he couldn't tell even me. And Shadow, Ranger, would just listen, like he understood every word. She looked directly at Emily now. That dog saved my husband's life. For 6 more years, at least. At the sound of Evelyn's voice breaking, Ranger emerged from under the table and approached her, resting his head on her knee in a gesture so gentle and deliberate that it brought tears to Noah's eyes. He knows you. Emily whispered, watching the interaction. He remembers you too. Evelyn's hand trembled as she stroked Ranger's head. When Jack died 2 months ago, Shadow, Ranger, stopped eating. He'd lie by Jack's empty chair all day. I thought taking him to the shelter might give him a chance at a new family. Her eyes lifted to Emily's, brimming with unshed tears. I never imagined he already had one waiting for him. The coffee shop faded into background noise as the two women regarded each other across the table, connected by their love for one loyal heart, divided by years neither could reclaim. Outside the coffee shop windows, gray clouds gathered as a November storm threatened, mirroring the emotional tension within. Noah had stepped away to give the women privacy, pretending interest in the pastry display while keeping a watchful eye on their conversation. I have so many questions, Emily said, her voice low and measured. 6 years of his life that I know nothing about. Ranger had returned to Emily's side but kept his gaze fixed on Evelyn, as if trying to bridge the gap between his two worlds. Evelyn nodded, dabbing at her eyes with a napkin. What do you want to know? Everything, Emily replied simply. His routines, his favorite things, how he spent his days with Jack. A sad smile touched Evelyn's lips. Jack took him fishing. Every Saturday at Occoquan Regional Park. Shadow, I'm sorry, Ranger, would sit in the boat for hours, just watching the water. She reached into her purse again and pulled out her phone, scrolling through photos until she found what she was looking for. Here, Emily leaned forward to see a picture of Ranger sitting regally at the bow of a small fishing boat, his ears perked forward, water and autumn trees behind him. He loved the water, Emily murmured. I used to take him to Lake Acadink to swim. Jack could never get him to swim, Evelyn said with a small laugh. He'd wade up to his chest, but wouldn't go deeper. That's because he needs the command, Emily explained, a hint of pride in her voice. I trained him for water rescue before I got him. The command is dive deep. Their eyes met across the table, a moment of shared understanding, two pieces of a puzzle coming together. What else? Emily asked, hungry for more connections to Ranger's missing years. He slept in our room, at the foot of the bed, Evelyn continued. Every morning at 5:30, he'd wake Jack for his medication. Never needed an alarm clock with Shadow around. Emily smiled. He used to wake me for my 6 a.m. runs, even on weekends. Never let me sleep in. And thunderstorms, Evelyn added. He hated them. Would hide in the bathtub. Still, Emily's eyebrows rose. I thought he'd outgrown that. He used to do the same at my place when he was younger. As they continued exchanging stories, the initial tension began to dissipate, replaced by a bittersweet camaraderie. Two women from different generations and circumstances, united by their love for one faithful animal. After a while, Evelyn's expression grew serious again. Look, I need to say this. I didn't come here to ask for him back. I know legally he's yours, and I can see how much he loves you. She paused, steadying her voice. But Jack would want you to know what Shadow, Ranger, meant to him. Emily reached across the table, hesitantly placing her hand over Evelyn's weathered one. Tell me about Jack, please. Evelyn's eyes grew distant, her fingers absently stroking the wedding band she still wore. He was a good man, hardworking, loyal. The back injury changed everything. The pain was constant, but the loss of purpose was worse. Construction was his life. Without it, she shook her head. The doctors gave him pills that made him a zombie, and when he stopped taking them, the darkness came. Depression? Emily asked softly. The blackest kind, Evelyn confirmed. 2 suicide attempts before he found Ranger. After that, he had a reason to get up each morning. Her eyes found Emily's, intense and earnest. Your dog saved my husband, Miss Harper. Gave him 6 more years than he would have had otherwise. Emily's eyes filled with tears. And Jack saved Ranger, she whispered. If he hadn't found him injured, I might never have seen him again. The realization hung between them. That loss and gain were 2 sides of the same coin. That Ranger's disappearance had been both tragedy and miracle. Ranger, sensing the emotion, rose and pressed his body against Emily's leg, his amber eyes moving between the 2 women with ancient wisdom. What happens now? Evelyn asked, her voice barely audible above the coffee shop's ambient noise. Emily took a deep breath, looking down at Ranger, then back at the woman who had shared her dog's love for 6 years. I don't know, she admitted, but I think maybe Ranger was meant to connect us somehow. Outside, The first heavy raindrops began to fall, pattering against the windows like nature's gentle applause for a truth finally spoken. The rain had intensified by the time Noah returned to the table, raindrops streaming down the coffee shop windows, distorting the view of the street outside. He approached cautiously, sensing a shift in the emotional atmosphere between the two women. "Everything okay?" he asked, sliding back into his chair. Emily nodded, her eyes red-rimmed but clear. "We've been sharing stories about Ranger. Turns out he's been living quite the double life. 2 families, 2 names, 2 sets of habits," Evelyn added, a tentative smile playing at the corners of her mouth. "But the same loyal heart." Noah felt some of the tension ease from his shoulders. He'd been prepared to mediate a conflict, not witness what appeared to be the beginnings of an understanding. Emily turned to Evelyn, her expression thoughtful. "Would you like to come to my house? To see where Ranger lived before and where he is now?" The invitation hung in the air, unexpected and profound. Evelyn's eyes widened slightly, then softened with gratitude. "I'd like that," she said quietly. "Very much." An hour later, they gathered in Emily's living room, where Ranger moved comfortably between them, alternately accepting affection from both women as if trying to demonstrate that his heart was big enough for both. This was his favorite spot, Emily explained, pointing to the blue armchair where Ranger had settled upon his return. He used to watch the birds at the feeder outside that window for hours. "Jack built him a window seat in our sunroom for the same reason," Evelyn said with a sad smile. "Called it Shadow's Throne." Emily moved to a bookshelf and took down a photo album, bringing it to the couch where they sat. As she opened it, Ranger immediately pressed closer, his nose nudging the plastic-covered pages. "These are from when he was a puppy," Emily explained, pointing to images of a gangly young Ranger with oversized paws and ears. "I got him from AK-9 training program washout, too gentle-natured for police work," they said. "A blessing in disguise," Noah commented from his position by the fireplace. He'd insisted on driving them both, concerned about Evelyn, who had seemed emotionally fragile, and now found himself witness to this unusual reunion. As they flipped through the pages of Ranger's early life, Emily's phone rang. She excused herself to answer it, disappearing into the kitchen. Ranger watched her go, then returned his attention to Evelyn, pressing his head against her knee. "He still loves you," Noah observed quietly. Evelyn nodded, tears welling in her eyes again. "And I love him, but I think he belongs here, with her." She looked around the warm, comfortable home with its evidence of Ranger's previous life carefully preserved. "She never gave up on him. Neither did your husband," Noah reminded her gently. "No," Evelyn agreed, absently stroking Ranger's ears. "Jack would say everything happens for a reason." She paused, her gaze growing distant. "You know, the strangest thing is that our house is only 3 miles from here. For 6 years, Ranger was living just a short distance from his first home." Noah's eyebrows rose in surprise. 3 miles? That's well within a dog's territory range, especially for a breed like German Shepherds. A thought suddenly struck him, one that seemed simultaneously impossible and perfectly logical. "Evelyn, did Jack ever mention if Ranger would sometimes disappear for hours? Maybe come home tired or muddy?" Evelyn's hand froze mid-stroke. "Yes," she said slowly. "About twice a month, Shadow would slip out if the gate was left open. Jack always said he was on patrol. He'd come back exhausted, sometimes not until evening." Noah turned as Emily re-entered the room. "Emily, after Ranger disappeared, did you ever have strange experiences? Things moved in the yard, or noises at night?" Emily's face paled slightly. "Yes, for the first couple of years, I sometimes thought I heard scratching at the back door. Once I found his old ball moved from the shelf to the middle of the yard." Her voice dropped. "I told myself it was the wind, or that I was imagining things because I missed him so much." The 3 humans exchanged stunned glances as the realization dawned on them all at once. "He was visiting," Noah said softly. "All those years, he was trying to maintain connections to both homes." "2 lives," Emily whispered, sinking into the couch beside Evelyn. "He was literally living 2 lives." Ranger looked between them with intelligent eyes that seemed to hold secrets only he could understand. The mystery of his dual existence written in a language humans could never fully translate. The room fell silent except for the steady rhythm of rain against the windows and Ranger's contented sigh as he settled between the two women who had, in their own times and ways, given him a home. Dusk settled over Emily's house, the rain having subsided to a gentle patter against the roof. The living room glowed with warm lamplight as Emily returned from the kitchen carrying a tray with 3 steaming mugs of herbal tea. Noah had made a brief trip to the local deli, returning with sandwiches that now sat mostly untouched on the coffee table. The revelations of the afternoon had left them all in a contemplative state, occasionally breaking the silence with new connections discovered, more pieces of Ranger's double life fitting into place. "I remember this one time," Evelyn said, accepting a mug from Emily. "Jack was convinced someone was trespassing in our yard. Small things were disturbed. The garden hose uncoiled, a flower pot moved. He even set up a camera." She shook her head with a sad smile. "Never caught anything, but now I wonder if it was me," Emily finished, settling back onto the couch. "Looking for Ranger. I drove through every neighborhood within 5 miles for months, calling his name." Ranger, who had been dozing by the fireplace, lifted his head at the sound of his name, his ears perking forward attentively. "It's almost like he created a bridge between your worlds," Noah observed, watching the dog's intelligent gaze move between the two women, neither fully here nor there, but connecting both. A comfortable silence fell over the room, broken only by the occasional crackle from the fireplace and the soft thump of Ranger's tail against the hardwood floor. "I need to ask you something," Emily said suddenly, turning to face Evelyn directly. "Something that's been on my mind since the coffee shop." Evelyn straightened, her hands tightening around her mug. "Of course. Would you?" Emily hesitated, then continued with growing resolve. "Would you consider still being a part of Ranger's life?" The question hung in the air, unexpected and profound. Evelyn's eyes widened, then immediately filled with tears. "What exactly are you proposing?" she asked cautiously. Emily set her mug down, leaning forward. "I don't know exactly. Maybe regular visits? He could spend weekends with you sometimes. She glanced at Ranger, who was now watching their exchange with alert interest. "I can't bear the thought of him losing you completely after everything you've been through together." "Are you serious?" Evelyn's voice was barely above a whisper. "Jack was important to Ranger," Emily said firmly. "Which means you're important to him too. I can't erase those 6 years, and honestly, I don't want to. They're part of who he is now." Noah watched the interaction with quiet amazement. In his 15 years of veterinary practice, he'd seen countless disputes over pet ownership, but never had he witnessed such a selfless proposal. "I don't know what to say," Evelyn admitted, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. "That's incredibly generous of you." "It's not generosity," Emily corrected gently. "It's recognition. You and Jack saved him when he was hurt and lost. You gave him a home, love, purpose. That creates a bond that deserves to be honored. Like shared custody," Noah suggested softly, the concept taking shape in his mind. A recognition that family doesn't always follow conventional definitions. Ranger rose from his spot by the fireplace and approached, his nails clicking against the hardwood floor. He stopped between the two women, looking from one to the other before settling his head on Emily's knee while pressing his body against Evelyn's legs. A physical manifestation of the bridge he had become. "I'd like that," Evelyn finally said, her voice steadier now. "Not to intrude, but to still have him in my life somehow. Jack would have wanted that." Emily nodded, a complex mixture of emotions playing across her face. Generosity tinged with the bittersweet recognition that the dog she'd recovered wasn't exactly the same one she'd lost. He'd been transformed by his years with Jack, carrying those experiences in his heart just as surely as he remembered his early training and habits. "There's something else," Emily said, rising from the couch and disappearing into the hallway. She returned moments later carrying a simple wooden box. "I had this made yesterday." She opened the box to reveal a new leather collar, rich brown with a brass buckle. Attached to it were 2 tags, one freshly engraved with Ranger Harper and Emily's contact information, the other a slightly worn tag reading Shadow Vasquez. "I thought he should carry both names," Emily explained, her voice thick with emotion. "Both parts of his story. Both families," Evelyn whispered in agreement. As if understanding the significance of the moment, Ranger sat perfectly still while Emily removed his old collar and fastened the new one around his neck. The tags clinked gently together, past and present, loss and recovery, two separate lives now acknowledged as one continuous journey. Outside, the clouds had begun to part, revealing a star-studded sky after the day's rain. Through the window, Noah could see the first quarter moon rising, its light casting silver shadows across Emily's front yard. Two worlds, he murmured, under the same moon. The weeks that followed brought a rhythm to their unusual arrangement. Sundays became Evelyn days, when Ranger would spend the afternoon at her small house in the neighboring community of Willowbrook. Emily would drop him off in the morning, and Noah, who had somehow become a permanent fixture in this evolving story, would often join them all for dinner in the evening. On this particular Sunday in early December, the first snow of the season dusted the region with a thin white blanket. Noah pulled into Evelyn's driveway just as Emily was helping Ranger from her car, the German Shepherd prancing excitedly in the fresh snow. "Sorry I'm late," Noah called, grabbing a paper bag of groceries from his passenger seat. The market was packed with people stocking up before the bigger storm hits tomorrow. Emily smiled as he approached, snowflakes catching in her chestnut hair. "We just got here ourselves." Ranger insisted on stopping at the park to roll in the snow. Indeed, the dog's black and tan coat was speckled with melting snowflakes, his tail wagging enthusiastically as he recognized Noah. Over the past month, Noah had found himself increasingly drawn into this unconventional family circle, his professional interest evolving into something more personal, particularly where Emily was concerned. Evelyn met them at the door, her face brighter than it had been at their first coffee shop meeting. The grief that had weighed her down still lingered in quiet moments, but Ranger's continued presence in her life had provided a bridge between past and future. "I hope everyone likes beef stew," she said, ushering them inside. It was Jack's favorite winter meal. The house was modest but warm, decorated with simple holiday touches, a small tree in the corner, a wreath on the wall. Noah noticed a framed photograph of Jack and Ranger prominently displayed on the mantel, now joined by a newer picture of Emily, Evelyn, and Ranger together at the shelter's Thanksgiving pet parade. While Evelyn finished dinner preparations, Emily and Noah settled in the living room. Ranger sprawled contentedly between them on the carpet. "I've been meaning to ask you something," Emily said, her voice casual but with an undercurrent of nervousness. "The shelter's holiday fundraiser is next Saturday. Would you like to go? With me?" Noah looked up in surprise, a warmth spreading through his chest that had nothing to do with the fire crackling in the hearth. "I'd like that very much," he replied, holding her gaze a moment longer than necessary. Their moment was interrupted by Ranger suddenly lifting his head, ears perked toward the kitchen. He rose and trotted toward the sound of Evelyn's movements, disappearing around the corner. "He still checks on her," Emily observed softly. "Makes sure she's okay. He's protective of both of you," Noah noted. "I've seen him do the same when you're in another room." Emily nodded, her expression thoughtful. "Dr. Abrams, my therapist, says Ranger is teaching me something important about love." "Oh," Noah raised an eyebrow, curious. "That it doesn't diminish when it's shared," Emily explained. "That his love for Evelyn and Jack doesn't take anything away from his love for me." She paused, her eyes meeting Noah's. "It's changing how I see everything." From the kitchen, they heard Evelyn's gentle laughter, followed by her voice speaking to Ranger in conversational tones. "Yes, I know it's almost ready. Your worse than Jack was about punctuality." As they moved to the dining room for dinner, Noah watched how naturally they had all fallen into this unusual family configuration. Evelyn setting out plates that included a special one for Ranger's portion of stew meat, Emily helping with glasses and napkins, Ranger moving between them with contented assurance. Over dinner, Evelyn shared stories about Jack's holiday traditions, and Emily contributed anecdotes about Ranger's puppy years. Noah found himself opening up about his own life, his divorced parents, his decision to become a veterinarian after a childhood dog had saved his family from a house fire. Later, as they sat with coffee in the living room, Ranger stretched out before the fire. Evelyn pulled out a worn leather journal. "I found this last week in Jack's things," she explained, running her hand over the cover. "It's from the first year he had Shadow, Ranger. I thought you might want to read it, Emily." Emily accepted the journal with reverent hands. Are you sure? These are Jack's private thoughts. He would want you to have it, Evelyn said firmly. To understand what your dog meant to him, what he still means to me. As Emily carefully opened the journal, a small photograph slipped out. A picture of a younger Jack sitting on a porch step, his arm around a thinner, slightly injured Ranger. On the back, written in strong, masculine handwriting, "The day shadow saved me." Noah watched as Emily and Evelyn leaned together over the journal, two women from different generations and backgrounds, connected by their love for one faithful heart. Outside, the snow fell more heavily, covering the world in pristine white, erasing boundaries and borders, much like Ranger had done with the boundaries in all their lives. Ranger rose from his spot by the fire and approached Noah, resting his head on the veterinarian's knee with a contented sigh. Noah stroked the dog's head, feeling the smooth leather of the new collar with its two jingling tags. "Two names, two homes, two loves. You've given us all a gift," Noah whispered to the dog. "You've shown us that the heart is never limited by fences or time or circumstances." Ranger's amber eyes held his for a moment, ageless and wise, before the dog turned and moved to settle between Emily and Evelyn on the couch, bridging their worlds once more. Outside, winter wrapped the three houses, Emily's, Evelyn's, and Noah's, in a blanket of snow, connecting them all under the same white sky. Inside, warmth and understanding grew between three humans who had found each other through one dog's extraordinary journey home. A journey that had, in the end, created not one home, but many, proving that sometimes the longest road leads not to a single destination, but to a constellation of belonging. Leave a like, subscribe to the channel, turn on the notification bell, and if you've watched this far, comment, "I watched this far," and share your opinion about this story. Oh, and don't forget to watch the next video that appears on the end screen. It's very exciting.